5 horror stories that will give you goosebumps.
1. The Vanishing Town. The sun was setting on the horizon as I drove down the long, winding road that led to the quiet town of Willowbrook. I had been on the road for hours, searching for a place to rest for the night, and this quaint town seemed like the perfect spot. Nestled among rolling hills, it exuded an aura of peaceful isolation that drew me in. As I entered Willowbrook, I was struck by its timeless charm. The streets were lined with historic houses, their facades adorned with ivy and wisteria. The town square boasted an old-fashioned clock tower, and the gentle breeze carried with it the soothing sound of rustling leaves. I pulled into a small motel, the Willowbrook Inn, and checked in for the night. The motel was cozy, with vintage furnishings and an air of rustic elegance. The innkeeper, a kindly older woman, welcomed me warmly and handed me an antique key. After a simple meal at a nearby diner, I returned to my room and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. The town's tranquility enveloped me like a comforting embrace. But when I awoke the next morning, something was amiss. The room was bathed in an eerie, muted light, and the silence was deafening. I couldn't hear the usual sounds of a bustling town. No cars passing by, no footsteps on the sidewalks, no birdsong. Puzzled, I dressed quickly and stepped outside, expecting to find the town coming to life with the morning sun. Instead, I was met with an eerie stillness that sent a chill down my spine. The town square, which had been so charming the night before, was now deserted. The shops and cafes that lined the streets were empty, their doors hanging ajar as though hastily abandoned. Not a soul could be seen, not a sound could be heard. I walked through the streets, my footsteps echoing eerily. It was as though the entire town had vanished overnight, leaving behind only a ghostly shell of its former self. Panic welled up inside me as I realized the gravity of the situation. Where had everyone gone? How could an entire town simply disappear? I approached the Willowbrook Inn, hoping to find some answers. The motel sign creaked ominously in the still air. I pushed open the door and entered the lobby, but it was as deserted as the rest of the town. The innkeeper was nowhere to be found, and the antique key she had given me was the only sign that anyone had ever been there. Desperation gnawed at me as I continued my search, but there was no one to be found. It was as though the town had been frozen in time, a snapshot of a moment that had been abruptly cut short. As I wandered through the empty streets, I noticed something odd. A calendar on the wall of a small grocery store. Its pages stopped at a date from the previous year. It was as though time itself had stood still in Willowbrook. Hours turned into days as I searched for any sign of life, but the town remained stubbornly deserted. The silence was oppressive, and the stillness weighed on me like a heavy shroud. I tried to contact the authorities, but my phone had no signal, and my attempts to reach the outside world were met with eerie silence. It was as though Willowbrook had been cut off from the rest of the world, a forgotten place trapped in its own isolated reality. Days turned into weeks, and I resigned myself to my solitary existence in the ghostly town. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, that there was some unseen presence lurking in the shadows. And then, one fateful night, as I wandered the deserted streets, I heard it, a faint, haunting whisper, carried on the wind. It was a voice, soft and plaintive, calling my name. I followed the sound, my heart pounding, until I reached the town square. There, in the pale moonlight, I saw them, the residents of Willowbrook, their figures ethereal and translucent, like wraiths. They gathered around the clock tower, their eyes filled with a mournful sadness. They whispered my name once more, their voices a chorus of longing and despair. It was as though they were trapped in a timeless limbo, unable to move on. Tears filled my eyes as I realized the truth. The town of Willowbrook had vanished not from this world but from the world of the living. Its residents were forever trapped in a spectral existence, and I, an unwitting traveler, had become a part of their haunting story. I tried to communicate with them to offer solace, but their ghostly forms simply faded away, leaving me alone in the deserted town once more. I returned to the Willowbrook Inn, where I now reside, a ghostly presence in a town of lost souls. The days pass in a never-ending cycle of loneliness and longing, and the eerie stillness of Willowbrook is now my eternal prison. I can only hope that one day someone will stumble upon this ghost town and uncover the haunting mystery that lies within its abandoned streets. A mystery that may hold the key to setting free the restless souls of Willowbrook, and perhaps even myself. 2. The Doppelganger. It was a typical morning when a strange encounter occurred. I was on my way to work, navigating the crowded subway platform, when I saw her. A woman who looked exactly like me. At first, I thought it was a bizarre coincidence, a doppelganger who happened to share my features. But as I looked closer, I realized it was far more than that. Her hair, her clothing, even the way she moved. It was all identical to me. It was as though I was staring into a mirror, but one that reflected an entirely different reality. Panic surged through me as I watched her, unable to tear my eyes away. She noticed me too, and her eyes locked onto mine with a chilling intensity. I felt a shiver run down my spine as a knowing smile spread across her face, a smile that mirrored my own. The train arrived, and we both boarded, our eyes never leaving each other. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself that it was a mere coincidence, but as the day wore on, strange things began to happen. I received emails from my own account, emails I had never sent, containing cryptic messages and warnings. My social media accounts posted updates that I hadn't authored, and my friends and family contacted me, bewildered by the bizarre messages they were receiving from me. That night, as I lay in bed, I heard a soft, echoing voice in my mind, a voice that seemed to be coming from somewhere deep within myself. They whispered my name, beckoning me to embrace the connection I shared with the doppelganger. Against my better judgment, I decided to seek her out. I returned to the subway platform where we had first encountered each other, hoping to find some answers. The platform was deserted, and an eerie silence hung in the air. I felt as though I were being drawn into some dark, otherworldly realm. And then she appeared, stepping out of the shadows with that unsettling smile. She introduced herself as Emily, and her words sent a chill racing down my spine. She claimed that we were connected in ways I couldn't comprehend, that our fates were intertwined, and that I had no choice but to embrace the merging of our lives. I tried to resist, to escape the web of madness that was closing in around me, but Emily was relentless. She seemed to know everything about me, my deepest fears, my darkest secrets, and she used that knowledge to manipulate me. Days turned into weeks, and my life began to unravel in terrifying ways. Emily and I shared experiences, memories, and emotions as though we were one. It was as though she had become a parasitic presence in my mind, feeding off my thoughts and emotions. I could feel her influence growing stronger, her personality merging with mine until I no longer knew where I ended and she began. I became a prisoner in my own body, a helpless witness to the horror of our merging existence. One day, as I stood on the edge of a rooftop, a chilling realization washed over me. Emily was no longer content with merging our lives. She wanted to take over completely. I could feel her pushing me toward the edge, urging me to surrender to her dominance. I fought with every ounce of my remaining strength, struggling to regain control of my own mind and body. The battle raged within me, a desperate struggle for survival. And then, in a moment of sheer determination, I severed the connection. I pushed Emily away, banishing her from my mind, and watched in horror as she plummeted from the rooftop. But the horror was far from over. As I stood there, gasping for breath, I realized that I had been forever changed. My life had been irrevocably altered by the merging of our existence, and I was left to grapple with the terrifying aftermath. I couldn't escape the feeling that Emily's presence still lingered, a malevolent specter haunting my every thought and action. The boundary between our two lives had blurred beyond recognition, leaving me forever haunted by the doppelganger I encountered on that fateful day. A doppelganger whose existence had become inextricably entwined with my own, a living nightmare from which there was no escape. 3. The creepy Arab. It had been a long year, and my friends and I decided to take a break from our busy lives with a weekend getaway. We found the perfect spot on Arab, a secluded cabin nestled deep in the woods. It promised peace, tranquility, and a break from the chaos of the city. Little did we know that the peace would be shattered by the disturbing events that awaited us. The cabin looked idyllic in the online photos, rustic charm, surrounded by towering trees and a pristine lake. It seemed like the perfect escape. We arrived on a Friday evening, our excitement palpable as we stepped out of the car and took in the serene surroundings. As we settled into the cabin, we couldn't help but notice a strange sensation in the air. It was as though the atmosphere held a weight, a subtle unease that we couldn't quite shake. We brushed it off as the unfamiliarity of our new surroundings and set about making ourselves at home. The first night passed uneventfully. We laughed and reminisced, enjoying the escape from our daily routines. But as we retired to our respective bedrooms, a strange occurrence shook our newfound peace. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a soft, almost imperceptible whisper. At first, I thought it was a dream, but as I listened, I realized that the voice was real. It was a low, eerie murmur, like someone speaking just beyond the edge of hearing. I crept out of bed and followed the sound, which seemed to lead me to the living room. There, in the dim light, I saw my friends gathered in a circle, their faces pale with fear. They, too, had heard the voice, a haunting chant that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once. We searched the cabin, but there was no one else there. The windows and doors were locked tight, and the voice continued to echo through the walls. It spoke in a language we couldn't understand, its words a jumble of unsettling sounds. Terrified, we decided to leave the cabin and find a nearby hotel. But as we gathered our belongings, the voice grew louder, more insistent, as though it were trying to prevent our escape. The drive to the hotel was tense, our minds filled with fear and confusion. We couldn't explain the strange occurrence, and the unease we had felt upon our arrival had now turned into sheer terror. At the hotel, we tried to put the disturbing incident behind us. We chalked it up to a bizarre glitch in the cabin's wiring and hoped for a peaceful remainder of our trip. But the events of that night had shaken us to our core. The following day, as we explored the nearby woods, we stumbled upon a hidden trail that led to a small, dilapidated cabin deep in the forest. It was overgrown with vines and surrounded by an aura of decay. Intrigued, we decided to investigate. As we stepped inside, a feeling of dread washed over us. The cabin was filled with strange symbols and markings, etched onto the walls in what appeared to be dried blood. It was a scene of utter horror, a place steeped in malevolent energy. In the center of the room, we found an old, weathered book, its pages filled with incantations and dark rituals. It was a book of unspeakable horrors, a relic of a bygone era when dark magic and witchcraft had held sway in the woods. We fled the cabin, our hearts pounding with terror, and returned to the hotel. As we pored over the book, we realized that the voice we had heard in the cabin was connected to the dark rituals described within its pages. We couldn't escape the chilling realization that we had stumbled upon something far more sinister than we could have ever imagined. The Erben Brental had been a gateway to a world of darkness and malevolence, and we were forever changed by the disturbing occurrences we had witnessed. As we left the cabin behind and returned to our normal lives, we couldn't help but feel that the darkness we had encountered still clung to us, a haunting reminder that there are places in this world where the line between the living and the supernatural is thin, and where the horrors of the past can reach out to touch the present in unimaginable ways. 4. The Sinister Hospital. I'd been feeling unwell for weeks, so when my doctor recommended a stay at Crestwood General Hospital, I didn't think twice. It seemed like the right place to get the treatment I needed, a beacon of hope in my battle against illness. Little did I know that the hospital held secrets far more sinister than I could have ever imagined. From the moment I checked in, there was something off about Crestwood General. The hallways were pristine, the nurses were polite, and the doctor seemed professional, but there was an underlying sense of unease that I couldn't ignore. The first sign that something was amiss came during a routine examination. As the doctor examined me, I noticed a strange glint in his eyes, a coldness that sent a shiver down my spine. He seemed detached, almost clinical in his approach, and when I asked questions about my condition, he deflected them with vague answers. As the days turned into weeks, I began to notice unsettling things. Patients would disappear from their rooms, their beds left empty without explanation. The hospital staff remained tight-lipped about their whereabouts, offering rehearsed excuses about transfers to other facilities. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being watched, that the hospital was hiding something from its patients. The doctors and nurses seemed to be going about their duties with an air of secrecy, and hushed conversations echoed through the corridors. One night, as I lay in my hospital bed, I overheard a whispered conversation outside my door. Two doctors were discussing a procedure, their words filled with cryptic references to the harvest and the chosen ones. My heart raced as I realized that something deeply sinister was at play. Determined to uncover the truth, I began to investigate the hospital's dark secrets. I sneaked into restricted areas, searching for any clues that could explain the mysterious disappearances and the sinister agenda of the hospital staff. What I discovered was beyond my worst nightmares. In the depths of the hospital's basement, I stumbled upon a hidden chamber filled with medical equipment and a series of strange, coffin-like contraptions. Tubes and wires connected the machines to a network of monitors, and a chilling realization washed over me. They were harvesting something from the patient, something I couldn't begin to comprehend. I fled the basement, my heart pounding, determined to expose the hospital's horrors to the world. But as I tried to leave, I found myself trapped in a nightmarish maze of locked doors and shadowy figures. The hospital had become a labyrinth of deception, and I was its unwilling prisoner. The doctors and nurses pursued me relentlessly, their faces contorted with malice as they closed in. They spoke of the harvest as though it were a sacred duty, a dark ritual that must be carried out at any cost. I managed to evade them, finding refuge in the hospital's ventilation system. From there, I watched in horror as the doctors and nurses conducted their sinister procedures on other patients, their cries of pain echoing through the sterile corridors. Desperation gnawed at me as I realized that I couldn't escape the hospital's clutches. The sinister agenda of Crestwood General was beyond comprehension, a nightmare that I could never wake from. In a final act of desperation, I decided to expose the hospital's horrors to the outside world. I used my phone to record the evidence, documenting the atrocities I had witnessed. But as I prepared to send the evidence to the authorities, I received a chilling message from an unknown sender. "We know what you're doing. You can't escape." Fear washed over me as I realized that the hospital staff was monitoring my every move. They had discovered my attempt to expose their dark secrets, and I was no longer safe. As I write this, I am still trapped in Crestwood General Hospital, surrounded by doctors and nurses who are determined to carry out their sinister agenda. I can only hope that someone will uncover the truth, that the horrors of this hospital will be exposed, and that I can finally escape the clutches of the sinister institution that has become my living nightmare. 5. The Malevolent App. I had always been a skeptic when it came to paranormal claims and supernatural phenomena. So when I first heard about the mysterious app known as Wishful, I dismissed it as nothing more than an urban legend. It was said that this app had the power to fulfill any wish, no matter how impossible. But the price it demanded was a secret that left its users trembling with fear. Little did I know that curiosity would lead me down a path of terror from which there was no escape. One evening, as I scrolled through social media, I came across a post that piqued my curiosity. It was a screenshot of the Wishful app, with a caption that read, "This app can make your wildest dreams come true." The comments below were filled with testimonials from people who claimed to have used the app and seen their wishes granted. Despite my skepticism, I couldn't help but wonder, what if this app was more than just an elaborate hoax? What if there was a rational explanation for the strange stories surrounding it? With a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, I downloaded Wishful onto my smartphone. The app itself seemed harmless enough. Just a simple, unassuming icon with the word Wishful written in elegant script. I hesitated for a moment before opening it, wondering if I was about to embark on a foolish adventure. But the allure of having a wish granted was too tempting to resist. I typed in my first wish, something trivial, just to test the waters. "I wish for a sunny day tomorrow." I pressed the submit button and watched as the app's interface flickered, as though processing my request. The next morning, I awoke to clear skies and a bright, warm sun. It was a beautiful day, just as I had wished. A sense of wonder and excitement welled up inside me, and I couldn't help but believe that the app had some mysterious power. Over the following days, I continued to use Wishful, each time submitting more extravagant wishes. I wished for wealth, success, and even love, and with each wish, my life seemed to improve. It was as though the app had unlocked a world of endless possibilities, and I reveled in the newfound power it gave me. But as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice a sinister undercurrent to my wishes. My success came at the expense of others. My newfound wealth brought with it greed and corruption, and my love was tainted by jealousy and possessiveness. It was as though the wishes granted by the app came with a dark price, one that left a trail of destruction in their wake. I tried to resist the allure of wishful, to break free from its malevolent influence, but the app had become an addiction that I couldn't escape. It whispered promises of power and fulfillment, and I was drawn deeper into its web of deception. As my wishes became increasingly twisted and malicious, I began to notice strange occurrences in my everyday life. Shadows seemed to move on their own, whispers filled the air, and I felt a presence lurking just beyond the edge of my perception. One night, as I lay in bed, I heard a voice, a soft, insidious whisper that filled my mind with dread. It was the voice of the app, and it spoke of the price I would have to pay for my wishes, a price that would cost me my soul. Terrified, I tried to delete the app, but it had become a malevolent force that refused to be cast aside. It continued to grant my wishes, each one more sinister than the last, until I was consumed by darkness. I became a prisoner of my own desires, trapped in a never-ending nightmare of my own making. The app had promised to fulfill my wishes, but it had come at a terrifying cost, one that would haunt me for eternity. As I write this, I can feel the malevolent presence of wishful closing in on me, its whispers growing louder with each passing day. I can only hope that someone will heed my warning, that they will resist the temptation of the app's promises, and that they will avoid the terrifying fate that has befallen me. Which story caught your attention the most? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Until next time, stay safe. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Check out my website in the description below to see what I'm writing. And just below there are some suggestions related to what we talked about today. Peace.